especially as a man, okay? As
Yeah.
a man in the business world, it's a very hard thing to kinda hold.
As a man in the business world, I can't imagine what that would be like because unfortunately, and I am using the word unfortunately intentionally, unfortunately, a woman in that position would be questioned less. It's almost like it would be expected. Like
Right.
it's okay. Of course she's emotional. You know what I mean? Like that would just be the thing. So I'm glad that you pointed that out. And I think it's absolutely beautiful. I feel like living from a place of intuition is the most life changing thing that could happen. So
And so you're just not gonna pick up on all this knowledge and all this wisdom is all around us, and it's just a matter of us tuning into it.
I get most of my messages from my intuition when it's my soul speaking to me, directing my path, or just making me aware of something. It can be so small.
But, gifts, they all have a dark side and a light side. The gift of tears is really beautiful. It's also a pain in the ass.
It feels like this level of authenticity and this level of not just awareness of what's going on between us, but also understanding you and like what feels true for you. It feels like I'm getting a freebie, right?
Good morning. My name's Bill Poutler, and I'm here with
Luisa?
Louisa, and we are doing Awakening and Conscious Living. And today our topic is intuition.
Yeah. So I'm so excited to talk about intuition. I feel like living from a place of intuition is the most life changing thing that could happen. So at least it felt like one of the main things, like when I started meditating, this is how it happened. I was in the house with my kids just alone, right? There's like a 3,000 square foot house. There's these huge walk in closets everywhere. But as a single mom of two, I'm like, have no time to myself ever. So I had this inkling of like, I should meditate, I should meditate, I should meditate, but had never like actually done it. So I decide in that moment, I'm in my bedroom and I decide I'm going to try it. And I'm like, okay, I need to do it before one of my kids comes to find me. And I went into the nearest closet that I could find, which was tiny. And I closed the door and I sat there and meditated for 2 minutes. And that was like the beginning of the realization that there was a lot more to me than everything I'd been projecting and the way that I had been living in the external world, which is, sort of about what we talked about last week, completely from like this place of ego. Um, and that was life changing. And that I mentioned that because that is what eventually led me to find out what intuition was, what my intuition is. And I just want to emphasize that at least for me, and I'm excited to hear your experience. I did not learn what my intuition was until I learned silence, until I learned stillness, until I learned the importance of what's within me and that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience.
That's incredible.
Right?
That's incredible. So tell me about what do you, I mean, the silence brought about the intuition, but tell me what intuition is and how you use it in your life and why it's important to you.
So intuition to me, and I think so this has evolved too for me. I will say, like from when my journey first began, the way that I defined it was different. I will say I do not feel like I have the best word, or maybe they are the best possible words, but just doesn't feel like it captures exactly what it is. I feel like you have to experience it really to understand. But intuition is to me is my soul speaking through me. It's my soul is giving me information, messages about, I'll say, for example, um, when you and I were talking, like the first time that you and I talked, it was like this sensation that I felt in my physical body that let me know, like, oh, there's something more to this. There's something more to you in this one time interview with Bill. So by that time, I already really trusted my intuition, but it's that voice. It's when my soul speaks to me. And it comes in different ways for me. So you mentioned of the clairs before,
Mhm.
and my intuition for me speaks to me through those, through the clairs. So I am clairvoyant, clairaudient is not greatly developed, Clairsentient is my stronger one, and what that means is I get most of my messages from my intuition when it's my soul speaking to me, directing my path, or just making me aware of something. It can be so small. It comes through physical sensations in my body. So
Mhm.
for me, my lower half, and it actually like right leg, left leg mean different things. Yes. And
Really?
then and that my lower half is usually a no. So it's usually either a negative or a no. My
Mhm.
upper body is usually a yes. I don't have the like two sides on the upper body, but on the lower body, the no is a little bit more descriptive for me. It's a no of like, no, that's not your path, or it's a no of like, slow down and like assess it. Because as a very human that I am, sometimes I have a tendency to not evaluate things before, like, making a decision or, like, being for example, for you and I, when we were talking about doing this, normally what I should do is like wait to hear my physical sensations, but that happened in the first conversation with you. And then as we were talking about, do we want to have this? How do we want to do it? Then it was like, I don't necessarily slow down to think about, oh, like why or what this means, etc. So that is my human tendency that gets in the way of that intuition. If I'm not like if I'm not in my body and I'm not paying attention intentionally to my body, I
Mhm.
will miss it. The main thing about my intuition, and I'm excited to hear how this is for you, is how subtle it is. So it doesn't scream at me. It's very subtle. If I'm not within my body and if I'm not paying attention to like the voices and if I'm not like paying attention, taking the time to close my eyes and my vision, it will pass, and then I will make a purely human, mental, logical brain thinking decision that does not come from my intuition.
Mhm. Yeah, that's incredible. That's very incredible.
It's awesome. It's awesome. I love it so much. It feels like a reward, really, to be honest. It feels like a reward of being in tune with myself, which I love and enjoy, so but
Yeah.
it really feels like this gift. It feels like a gift that I've been giving the ability to tune into my intuition so clearly and
Mm.
in so many different ways because at the beginning, I didn't have all of these. When my awakening first, started, I didn't have all of them. But the more I got in tune with myself, the more I meditated and sat in stillness, the more I became aware of the other sensations and the other ways that I was receiving, that my soul was speaking to me and guiding my path, really.
Mhm. I'm, what the word is I'm looking for. Thank you for letting your intuition guide us to have this podcast and to talk some more. I appreciate that.
Thank you so for guidance.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I think that, your intuition gifts are pretty amazing. Mine are different than that a little bit. I do feel it in my body, um, but things just have to be right for me. It's like I can just feel when things are right and when things are wrong. Um, let's talk about what blocks our intuition.
Mm.
Okay. So you've talked about that just a little bit. You want to expand on that?
Yeah, sure. So, what blocks my intuition is me not being in my physical body. So, for me, movement is extremely
Mhm.
important. So,
Okay.
if I go like a week or two without like exercising or getting out and walking,
Mhm.
there's a big connection to nature for me, and I think you and I share that. If I'm not out in nature, so it's not just like going to the gym. Like most people are like, yeah, move my body, go to the gym, exercise. It's not just that. That is a part of it. The physical movement is a part of it. But also being in nature. Like the most alignment and the most joy and fulfillment that I have felt in my life has been when I like go to the park and just sit there for hours at a time and like stare at a tree. It's I can't explain it. It sounds crazy, but it's so fulfilling, and if I don't take the time to at the very least, go for walks in the park and spend a little bit of time in the park or in my backyard, just outside, usually shoes off. I am the weird girl that, like, walks without shoes at the park, that's me. Um, connection with nature for me also looks like I've hugged trees. My daughter does not let me. She's very, into, like, science, and so she talks about all of the things that are happening in that tree, and she's like, "Do not go hug it." So, yeah, she looked at it from a very, like, all the insects and all the things that could be on it and la la la, and so I am a tree hugger when I am without child.
There you go.
So those things, not doing those things will block it. And I have a very weird one. I've talked to my friend about this and it's very weird. And it's proven true over and over again because I went a period of time testing it. I was like, am I crazy? Is this a mental thing?
Mhm.
Um, so actually let me back up before I go into that one. So that's a block for me. The not doing physical activity will block me completely because I will be solely in my mental logical brain and so I will operate fully out of like all of these logical things and, the way that I'm supposed to make decisions in society and what it's supposed to look like versus feeling and getting responses from my own body and my own soul for guidance, right? My intuition.
Mhm.
The very weird thing that I have tested and chocolate blocks my intuition. And it's a
Wow.
crazy thing because I love chocolate. Like, I could probably live without any other sweet, but, like, chocolate, like, 70% chocolate is, like, my sweet spot, sea salt and caramel, but it does block me, and it's interesting because after I've become aware of it and, did this test for, like, a few months on and off and just kind of after I've become aware of it, I can get out of it pretty quickly, so, like, if I do physical movement or the quicker that I can get it out of my body, the quicker that it's back and, like, I can hear my intuition again in all different ways. I don't know I mean, obviously, there's no I would love to give myself to an experiment to find this out, but, intuition hasn't been scientifically proven either, so it would be a difficult place to start. Um, but those are the things that block me, and I don't know this for a fact because I've removed myself, but I think noise, being around noise constantly
Yeah.
would probably eventually really affect my ability to listen to myself. Just because I'm so used to being in silence, and not complete silence. I mean, I have children and a dog and a life and a job and all the things, but being in silence more than not, and taking, those moments to be intentionally still. So
Yeah.
those are my main blocks that I can think of right now. What about for you? Let's start with what is intuition for you? How does it show up, and then how does it feel, and what are your blocks?
Um, but I actually made a list of blocks so that I'm just going to look at them. Overthinking is a block.
Mm.
Overthinking is a block. The way I think about intuition is, I mean, in these bodies, well, if we were on the other side of the veil, if we were in our spiritual bodies, okay, um, our limitations wouldn't be as great as they are in the physical bodies. I mean, I think I've talked about this. With our eyes, we can only see so far. An eagle can see further than we can. Your dog can smell much differently than we can. I actually read an article the other day about how dogs can see urine like a track, like a yellow track or something,
It's
uh,
interesting.
that they just can see that and smell. Um, so inside of our body, there's all this going on at one time, right? I mean, there's wind going on and like my feet are cold right now. I can feel my feet. And when I was, I'm in this cold house right now. And when I was standing on the floor earlier and I had my socks on, I could feel the cold come up through my feet and up my spine, right? So
Yeah.
there's all these things we've got going on. And it's really about selectivity, what we choose to focus on, right? So when we're in chronic stress, when we're in hyper vigilant situations, when we're focused on a movie, um, whether when we're in fear or anger, okay? All those things focus us, which blocks us from our intuition, okay?
Mm.
So the intuition, this knowledge, this wisdom is all there all the time. It's just a question of whether you're paying attention to it. Um, And I want to come back to, and maybe I'll come back to the blocks in just a second. The blocks, what blocks are intuition. But when you talk about your body, there's a couple things going on here that are very interesting. I just watched this, but I knew this intuitively. But our spine is an antenna. And if
Mm.
you really think about how the old antennas looked, it's like this, you know, one single cylinder, and then they had those little rods going off like this.
Yeah.
That's exactly how our spine works, right? We've got this spinal rod and we've got these ribs and stuff coming around. Okay. It's like an antenna. Our pineal gland is also an antenna, right?
Mhm.
Which is, up here. Um, and all the yogis say, oh, I'm going to cry. This must be true if I cry. Um, the yogis say that they can look at somebody's how they stand, their spine, and tell how enlightened or awakened they are.
Wow.
Um, and so I've actually been working a lot on I'm going to call it spinal health, in that just bending and twisting and kind of some yoga stuff and just keeping my spine supple is one of the things that I believe is leads to good health. The other thing is that I I've got a friend, uh, had a friend, um, that was a cranial sacral therapist. And you know anything about cranial sacral? Okay. There's a fluid that runs up and down your spine.
Okay.
Okay. And it flushes your brain. And they call it the cranial sacral fluid. And actually, while you're sleeping, that fluid flushes your brain like 100 times faster than it does when you're awake. Okay. But I went to this, my friend was teaching a class. And so I'm like, because it's kind of a weird thing, it's kind of like Reiki, you
Yeah.
know, um, and and craniosacral therapists use this to heal, but also you can read somebody's craniosacral rhythm by not even touching them. Okay. So I'm in this class with all these people. Most of them are therapists and stuff like that. And they're, some of them didn't know anything about craniosacral, and some of them were very gifted and skilled. Um, but I had like zero therapy and zero cranial sacral, okay? Cranial sacral, but I wanted to learn this. And so we're in this class and people are feeling each other's rhythms and stuff. And I'm like, I'm not feeling, and we're paired off in partners, right? I'm not feeling anything. And I'm like, these people are all spaced out. This is some shit they're making up. And then all of a sudden I was working with my partner in this class and I felt it. And I
Yeah.
was like, "Holy shit, this is real." So, literally, once you learn, and I can't do it, I'm not good at it. I think I do it intuitively, but I can't, like, put my hands on somebody or over somebody and feel it. I just have never continued to practice it. But you can ask yourself a question, or you can ask somebody else a question. And when you read their rhythm, I don't remember which way it is. If it stops, it's a yes, or if it uh, speeds up, it's a no. I don't remember. It could be the other way around. And or if it slows down, it's kind of in between. So literally, your body and the rhythm of your body and this fluid that's running up and down your spine, all the way from your what's your bottom chakra? I don't remember which one that is.
The root chakra.
The root chakra, that's right. That would make sense, right? I ought to be able to remember that root chakra. Uh, from your root chakra all the way up to your crown chakra. Okay. There's fluid moving up and down that spine. And that is your antenna, and that is tuned into everything. And so when you're reading, this is what I believe, when you're reading somebody's cranial sacral uh, fluid and it stops or doesn't stop, when you ask it questions, it's your antenna. that's like tuning into your intuition.
Yeah, it feels so true. I'm very interested in this cranial sacral fluid. I'm probably gonna dig into it after we chat, but being on this spiritual journey, I think that's part of the beauty is seeing how our human 3D, our physical body encompasses our spirit, like, excuse me, like, how it holds it in so many different ways, right? We have the chakra system, we have the cranial sacral fluid, we have, the third eye, the pineal gland. We have this beautiful integration of our spiritual being and our human body, and one of the most beautiful things I think is when you encounter someone who has beautifully integrated that, right? That our physical being, our 3D experience with our spiritual experience, it's magnetic. We get pulled to those people, and it's such a beautiful connection that is almost indescribable. And it makes for the human experience to be better.
Well, we have our minds, our brains are very important because they help us dissect things in the world. But we over commit to this dissection of everything. Okay. And intuition is is the knowledge that you have, the wisdom uh that you have that you have access to before thought. Okay. And that's what I kind of think intuition is. It's it's the feeling that you have before you start chopping it up with your brain. I thought of one of my nephews had a car accident 6 months ago or so. Nobody was hurt, but he was a new driver. Okay. And so there's so many little things that you don't know as a new driver, right?
Yeah.
And that's why so many young drivers, along with a lot of bravado and having fun and going crazy, they don't pick up all the subtle things. There was a big truck. It was slowing down to turn in front of him. Okay. And he just assumed that that truck was going to stop, you know, but it didn't. Okay.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about his intuition was not ripe. It wasn't because they had too many things, too many other learning things going on. A lot of times when we drive, we look at somebody, right? You look them in the eyes. When I'm riding my bicycle or my motorcycle, especially, I'm looking people in the eyes when I'm going through intersections and stuff because I'm trying to figure out, are they going to pull out in front of me?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you miss the little cues. Like, I'm sure that this guy that was fixing to turn in front of my nephew, his wheels were probably turned just a little bit. His
Mm,
vision was probably over there just a little bit. Even though he was fooling with his phone and doing all type of stuff. Didn't have his blinker on, right? Country road. Um, and my nephew, he didn't have the wherewithal to pick up on all those little cues.
yeah.
And that's kind of what intuition, I mean, that's a very physical example, but that's when our system has got to be calm.
Yes.
Okay. And if you're never in silence, you're never going to get calm, right?
Yeah.
And so you're just not going to pick up on this, all this knowledge and all this wisdom is all around us. And it's just a matter of us tuning into it. So it's like when you walk into a party or you walk into a room and all of a sudden you have this feeling about somebody, right? Could be really good.
Yeah.
Like, when we
Yeah.
decided to start doing this podcast, or it could be like, "Oh, this feels creepy," or
Yes.
this guy is not telling me the truth," right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's your intuition. That's before thought. That
Yes.
feeling happens before thought.
I love it so much because you gave the physical descriptions, which I think if you're not on this journey, if you haven't experienced it, like I said, I have such a hard time putting it into words, but you just did that so beautifully. And so the antenna that you described, that knowledge, that wisdom, that unlimited wisdom, I can actually visualize that, like as you're saying it. But like I'm almost out in the universe and it's almost like I can visualize that wisdom and I see all these little cell looking things, which are us, our, our spirit. Um, and I see us just like being able to just access it, like almost like a cartoon, just like being able to like pull it like as we need it, as we're operating down here. That knowing that you mentioned that, in the clairs, if we talk about it from a clairs perspective, like, it's that clair knowing. It's just when you know something, you
Mhm.
just know. And it's like you mentioned, like at that party, you meet someone and you just know, you get this feeling and you cannot explain. There is no explanation for it. There is no logical explanation for it, but and that knowing it, if you're able to, listen and tune in when you get to that place, because if you're able to, what I mean by that is, like, if you are aware enough of it, like, if you're beyond that new driver and you've paid a little bit more attention to it, because we all have this, we all have these abilities. There is nothing special about me in terms of being able to do this. This is just because I've probably meditated a lot more, which has made me and been in silence, and in stillness, which has allowed me the awareness that it exists and how it works and how it comes through for me. But
Right.
every single one of us has access to this. We are all part of the universe. We all have access to that infinite wisdom that you speak of. I mentioned earlier the person that lives out of that integration of the 3D body and, our spiritual being, they're magnetic like us. Like when I connected with you, I immediately felt like that magnetism. When you can operate from that and you are tuned into that, it creates this experience in so many different ways that without that wisdom, I feel like your experience here in the 3D is very only 3D, is very material world driven. And that's not that it's not that it's good or bad. That's not what I'm placing on it. What I'm saying is that your experience is different when you tap into that internal wisdom that we have, because like that clear knowing, it can change your life in the 3D, because paying attention to that for me, like there's so much clarity when I meet someone, I pretty immediately like no, like yes or no, yes or no. And I'm starting to develop my ability to know beyond yes or no, how this person is supposed to be in my life, like what I'm supposed to learn from them, because I'm a big focus on like what is their purpose in my life and my journey.
Agreed.
So now it's like at first it was only yes or no, and now it's developing into a further knowing. And that is what I mean when I say, you know, living out of intuition or using it sometimes, however you choose to operate, but using and being aware of your intuition and of that infinite wisdom and not can have such an impact on the kind of life that you get to live, the kind of connections you make to have, the way that you experience, I explained sometimes at the beginning of my journey, I started to practice my intuition by mostly listening to like, should I take a right turn or a left turn? Like just tuning in for that moment and
Mhm.
like, can I listen to it? Like, can I hear it so clearly in this situation, right? I'm driving, there's so many things going on, like you mentioned. So it was one of the first ways that I practiced. Yeah.
I think one of the important things to take away from what you just said is that you have to practice it.
Yes.
Yeah, you've gotta practice it. If you're, you know, if you just use it once every 6 months or once, it it's like anything, you know?
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
get good at tennis by going out the first day and then not going out for 6 more months,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's very true. And that brings me up to the next question is, what is the difference between intuition and fear-based impulses? And if you're only using that intuition and tuning in intentionally every
Mhm.
6 months, you can get it confused, just speaking from experience here, as to what is the intuition and what is, the fear-based impulses. And fear for me played a big role in when I could hear and could not hear my intuition. Or rather not necessarily hear it or not hear it, but, like, accept it. Accept because it's so subtle, can come for example, you and I are having this conversation, and when you say something that feels true and aligns for me, like, I get this sensation in my lower upper body, but it's very subtle. It is not screaming at me, there's no aching pain, there's no, like, boom boom in my body. It is
Mhm.
a very gentle feeling. So, one of the things that I experienced early on when learning to tune in was is that questioning whether that was my intuition or whether it was fear-based. So, whether it was my mental, logical brain and my wounded
Mm,
self that was, you know, giving me information.
mhm,
And that you just again, for me, it just goes back to practicing it and, you know, just like the stillness, which is part of practicing it, learning to discern
mhm,
that voice, what I landed on, what I ended up being able to move towards to get me out of that phase where I had to question whether it was fear-based impulses or my wounds, you
mhm.
know, or, you know, all of the, societal,
Programming.
programming, yes. What I landed on was, if it feels light,
Mhm,
then that's my intuition.
mhm.
Because if it's heavy, that's not. I've never felt a heavy intuitive hit where it feels negative and it drags me down and it makes me never have I ever.
I think that that is probably a really good thing for any of our listeners to remember. And I've never really thought about it that way. But I mean, we talk about being enlightened, right? You know, being of the light. Uh, but light has those multiple definitions, heavy or light or dark and light, you know. Um, but I think that you're right. I think that intuition, if it feels light, it's probably pretty spot on. But I would tell anybody, play with it and see, you know, where it lands in your body, how it lands in you might be different than how it lands in me or on somebody else.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that because my friend and I, who talk about this often,
Mhm.
she is very it comes through very differently for her,
Yeah,
very differently. And we will both get the same information, you know, like from that pool of wisdom that you mentioned. So it is important because it is not going to be for you like it is for anybody else. It is going to be your own way and your own experience. And I totally agree with what you said. Play with it. You have to play with it. It has to sort of like that game that I made for myself, you know, testing it left or right. You do
right.
have to play with it. You have to give it space like anything new that you're learning, you have to learn to tune into it.
Mhm. This is this is not gonna be exactly about intuition, but it is about learning how to master all our body parts, our physical bodies in tune with our spirits. I love this story, and I wrote about this in my book that and you may be aware of it, but, you know, Jesus was walking in this crowd of people, you know, and everybody's all around him real tight, right? And his disciples were around him. And the lady who had the bleeding problem reached out. She said, if I could just touch his cloak, I'll be healed, right? Um, and so Jesus is walking through the crowd. Everybody's touching him, and he's, you know, surrounded by his disciples, and he stops and he said, "Who touched me?" And his disciples go, "What do you mean, Lord? Everybody's all around you." And he goes, "I felt the energy run from me." And so, you know, everything is energy, right? These words carry energy. But the point is that as a master, okay, and Jesus had disciples, right? And the word disciple comes from discipline, right?
Mm.
So if you want to be a in tune, a spiritual master, somebody who's comfortable with their intuition and with their energy. It's a discipline. You have to practice it, right?
Mm. I love
Uh,
that.
but as you practice these things, you practice your intuition, you practice when you hold your energy or you give your energy, right? And you start paying attention to all those things. That's when you become a master of your physical body and your spiritual body, all combined into one.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
There's nothing to add to that, that is so perfect.
yeah.
Yeah. You know, as you were saying that, I wonder, do you wanna touch, if you feel comfortable, talk about your gift of tears? Does this seem like the appropriate episode?
Any episode be appropriate because I cry all the time. Uh, tell me what you wanna know.
So, one of the things that I've been interested in is and I'll tell you how I understand it. And then I would love for you to sort of talk me through how it started and, like, how it comes about for you. The way that I've thought about it so far is that your gift of tears is almost like a clair. It's a way of communication where you gather and pull that, infinite wisdom. And when something feels true for you, like that is a truth that you align with, then that's when you get the gift of tears. That's when it comes true. How did
Yep.
that start? How do you also very interested, something that you mentioned before, sorry. There are a lot of things that I wanna know. How did you ever maneuver that in, like, a corporate working environment?
Oh, it was terrible. I'd be
I
I would know, like, I was in sales and running a company, but had to start by selling stuff, right? And I would be at a conference room table in a business suit with other business people, and I knew these people need my product. And I'd start talking with them and do it, and then I'd just start crying.
Oh my
And
god.
people, like, look at you like, "WTF," right?
Yeah.
And I can't really hold it back. I've tried to hold it back, but I can't really hold it back. I mean, I can, but then I just get all clogged up per se, not
Yeah.
physically, just, I get in, I don't know, worldly mode. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, you know, people just got used to it. Most people think it's weird. I think I say this all the time. My kids used to say, "Don't let dad pray." And then
Oh.
I start crying, Um, but, and especially as a man, okay? As a
Yeah.
man in the business world, it's a very hard thing to kinda hold, but
Yeah.
I couldn't really control it, so I just went with it.
That's interesting. Did anyone, like, straight up ask you why it happened? Did anyone, like, address it? Because I know in, like, these corporate environments, at least for me in the legal field, people will, like, dance around it. Like, did people just straight up be like, "Oh, what's happening?"
Pretty much people dance around it, but, I mean, occasionally somebody will like, after a meeting or something, they'll pull you aside, and I'll just say, "When I feel things really deeply," which is what it is, kinda resonating with my truth, I think, I just can't stop it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting and so beautiful, and I think that also just goes to support what we were saying. It's like it manifests differently for all of us. Like, what feels true to you, the way that it's gonna come through, it's just different for every single one of us.
But, gifts, they all have a dark side and a light side. The gift of tears is really beautiful. It's also a pain in the ass.
Yeah. Yeah.
It can be. I mean, you're sitting around, everybody else is laughing, you're crying, right? They're like, "Who's the weirdo at the end of the table?"
Yeah, and if people don't understand, they just don't understand, and they just label you as what they know,
Right.
and that's usually like, "Oh, that's weird." Especially you, and I love that you pointed this out, especially as a man in the business world. I can't imagine what that would be like because unfortunately, and I am using the word unfortunately intentionally, unfortunately, a woman in that position would be questioned less. It's almost like it would be expected. Like
Right.
it's okay. Of course she's emotional. You know what I mean? Like that would just be the thing. So I'm glad that you pointed that out. And I think it's absolutely beautiful. Because I feel the truth, right? Like I feel it, but nobody else knows that I have felt the truth. Right? It's just me and my body, and if I don't share it, which I don't 99% of the time, I just keep it to myself, then nobody knows. I love the physical manifestation of it for you. Like, I love knowing as I'm talking to you that, like, whatever you're sharing or whatever we're talking about, it's resonating and it feels true to you. It just feels like this level of authenticity and this level of not just awareness of what's going on between us, but also understanding you and like what feels true for you. It feels like I'm getting a freebie, right? If we're forging a relationship, any type of relationship, like, it feels like I get to kinda know what feels true for you and what doesn't, and I love it. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, and, we talked about or I talked about, being a man in this world, and, men aren't supposed to cry per se, and I was
Right.
kind of my grandfather. was not like that, but my father was definitely like that, he kinda got a man up in the world.
Mm.
Um, and I I wanna tell everybody, and most people probably know this, but we all carry male and female energy. And, if we didn't have that balance, you know, male energy is great, it's warring, it's creating, it's fire, but without the female energy, and mothering energy can be strong too. You never get between a bear and her cub, right?
That's right.
Uh, that's just a no-no. That's just stupid, right?
Yeah,
Um, but mothering is a birthing energy also. It's not a warring energy.
yeah.
And uh, we carry both those energies. And sometimes a man, in fact, I carry a little more female energy than I carry male energy. Uh, I kind of knew that, but I had a Vedic astrology reading, and my astrologer, who was a very wise old Indian man, he's still alive, still does Vedic readings. Um, he's like, you carry more female energy than male energy. And I'm like, I know. And that's a pain in the ass too. Um, from being a man's man in this world. Um, but we the point is we all have access to both of those energies. And we can work on our male energy or work on our female energy to bring ourselves a little more into balance, not just aligned with what the world tells us we should do.
Yeah, I love you that you brought that up. So I will say it in the terms that I use because I think this is important. I call it masculine energy and feminine energy. So it's the same exact thing that you described. I just use those terms, masculine energy and feminine energy.
Yeah.
Personally, and I will say this actually as my son comes up, I will say this, for me, balance looks like a balancing of the feminine and the masculine energy. Like
Right.
when I am in most like fulfillment, mostly enjoying my 3D experience, integrating my spiritual and my physical body, I have this beautiful balance of feminine and masculine energy. As a single mom, one of the things that I struggled with a lot was operating out of that masculine energy. 'Cause I have to go. I need to make things happen. Bills need to get paid. Tuition needs to get paid. Like that's
Right.
not going to wait for me. So I struggled with that for a while. And I say struggle, not because it's not okay to have more of one or the other, but because for me, it didn't sit well. That's not what sat well with me. And I think that's really important to be aware of is that everybody doesn't need to balance it the way that I feel like I need to balance it. For me, it feels like it needs to be very 50-50 most of the time. And with that struggle of like having mainly masculine energy, it took a while to get to this place of softness. It took a while to get to this place of being able to be head in business, head in, work. And then in the next moment, my child walks in and needs nurturing and being able to give that to her in that moment. And that took practice. It took first self awareness and it takes practice. But we all, kind of like the yin and the yang, it's kind of like they are both within us and both are, in my viewpoint, necessary for us to lead a beautiful human spiritually integrated experience. And I will say I mentioned my son because I did most of the raising. So I raised him for the most part. He had a male figure in his life for a big part of his life,
Good.
but in terms of influence and in terms of, like, morals and in terms of values, I was the one who integrated those things.
Okay.
And I see it's not physically visible, right? Because like I just told you, I had a hard time moving out of that masculine energy, and people would look at me and be like, "Oh, but you're, like, super feminine." Like, and like, I do my makeup every day and I wear heels and all the things.
Right.
Yes, that's not what it's about. And
Right.
so for my son, yeah, he looks very masculine, like, he has a six pack and he's, works out every day and all the things. So he looks what society would contribute to mean masculine, but
Right.
he actually also holds a little bit more than 50% of feminine energy,
Mhm.
based on his values, based on how I raised him, and based on all of that. Will that change as he evolves and becomes his own person because he's still young, he's only 18? Probably, depending on what feels in alignment for him. But for now, he holds a little bit more of that feminine energy based on where his value system comes from and where, just the way that he operates and sees the world for now. So I just share that to assure viewers and listeners that there is a balance for you. My 50-50 does not mean that that masculine and feminine energy is going to align with you as also 50-50.
No, I agree. And, there's our natural state, whatever we have, a little more male, a little more female.
Mhm.
Um, but then as we bring mastery to our spiritual and physical bodies, then we can choose when to use masculine energy, when to use feminine energy.
Yes.
And then you also talked about the yin and the yang, and the yin yang symbol, the Tajé that's round and it's got a little.
Mhm.
Well, if you notice, I mean, you know, it's got a kind of a white swirl and a black swirl, but inside the white swirl is the dot of darkness, and inside the black swirl is the dot of lightness. And that is the masculine feminine, where they're working together, they're flowing together, but each one contains a piece of the other.
Yeah, yeah. And they must coexist at different capacities for all of us, but they
Yes.
must.
If everything was feminine energy, I mean, this place would be crazy. If
Yeah.
everything was masculine energy here, everything would be dead.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing that happens just when we can integrate our spiritual beings, pull from that infinite wisdom, and I think accept that we are, energetically, we are light and darkness. Like we are both. And there's a saying, I have no idea where it comes from, but something about don't throw stones at a glass house or something like that. What that means to me is you have your own darkness within you. So
yeah,
for you to sit there and throw stones at the other person for whatever it is that you don't align with, that does not mean that there aren't things within you that are still looming and that have their own shadows. That's why it's important to acknowledging that we are all these drops and we are different. These drops are all different. To me, that's what's beautiful. That is what is the most beautiful.
I've thought a lot about what if everybody was like me? This world would be so boring.
Yes, I say that all the time. I'm like, the level of boredom that would exist in the world if they were all Luisas, like, I know, I don't want that. I love meeting people with different backgrounds, different experiences, different hobbies, different views of the world. Told you before, it's one of the things I enjoy most about relationships is being able to view the world. I feel like that is such a joy that I
Mhm.
get based on having a relationship with other people is seeing the world through their eyes, the way that they perceive it, what they believe in, how they got there, like what experiences made them get to that place. I it's a blessing, really.
It's a huge blessing.
Yeah.
Now, I always think about all of us together being like a mosaic or like a tapestry. We're all a particular tile in the mosaic, or we're all a particular thread in the tapestry. But, if it was all just one color, one thread, there would be no beauty to it, right?
Oh, that was beautiful. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yes. That's perfectly said. I think that wraps up the episode beautifully, talking about intuition and how to strengthen your intuition. I hope that everyone took something away from this. And I am all here for, any questions, comments. If anyone wants to practice intuition, I'm here for all of it, really hoping that this reaches the people that are on this journey and on this path. And I'm so open and excited to meet viewers and listeners. So reach out to us if you have any questions.
yeah, I think either both of us are, wanting to help people grow in their spiritual life and their intuition. And a teacher only becomes uh, good when they teach. That's when you get really
Mhm.
good at teaching, is when you start to teach, because the students pull it out of you and you pull it out of your students. And I say this all the time, the word education it comes from the word educe. So what a good teacher does is they educe, they pull out of the student the wisdom that the student already has. So that's,
That's
that's what we're
beautiful.
doing, and if we don't have students to help pull them out, and we don't have people to help pull stuff out of us, and then it's just how it works.
Yeah. I
So,
love that. That's beautiful. Yeah, we're here for all of that. Thank you for tuning in for another episode and send in any questions that you have, anything that you want us to discuss on any episodes, and we'll see you next time.
great. Bye, y'all.